When 78-year-old Vietnam veteran Walter Briggs walked into St. Mary's Medical Center that Tuesday morning, he had no idea that asking for a simple antibiotic prescription would lead to the most humiliating experience of his post-war life. The hospital receptionist took one look at the elderly black man with the cane and immediately assumed he didn't belong there, loudly announcing that these types of people always cause problems and probably can't pay anyway. What happened next would be captured on security cameras and change how veterans are treated at that hospital forever. Because the man she was dismissing wasn't just any patient. He was a decorated war hero whose former commanding officer was about to walk through those same doors. And when General Robert Avery heard how his old friend was being treated, the entire hospital staff would learn what happens when you disrespect a man who gave everything for his country. The morning sun filtered through the large windows of St. Mary's Medical Center as patients and visitors moved through the spacious lobby. It was just after 9:00 a.m., and the reception area was busy with the usual mix of scheduled appointments and walk-in patients seeking medical care. Among them, 78-year-old Walter Briggs moved slowly with his polished wooden cane, a necessity since the shrapnel wounds from Vietnam had finally caught up with his aging joints. Walter wore a simple button-down shirt and khaki pants, looking like any elderly gentleman coming in for routine medical care. But folded carefully in his wallet were documents that told a different story: his Purple Heart citation, Bronze Star Commendation, and Silver Star Medal, earned when he saved 43 men during 3 separate combat operations in Vietnam. Today he needed something simple: antibiotics for a persistent infection that his regular doctor had recommended treating at the hospital. As Walter approached the reception desk, he presented his Medicare card and ID with the same crisp precision he'd maintained throughout his 40-year military career. "Good morning. I'm here to see about getting a prescription filled. My doctor referred me here for the antibiotic treatment." The receptionist, a woman in her 40s named Lisa Chen, looked up from her computer screen with an expression that immediately shifted from professional courtesy to barely concealed annoyance. After working at St. Mary's for 8 years, Lisa had developed what she considered keen instincts about which patients would cause problems, and something about the elderly black man triggered all her assumptions. "These types of people don't belong here," Lisa said loudly enough for several other patients in the waiting area to hear, not bothering to lower her voice or show any discretion. "Elderly black men like this usually don't have proper insurance. They're probably here looking for free treatment or trying to get drugs." Walter felt his face flush with embarrassment as heads turned in his direction. The public nature of the accusation was devastating, especially coming from someone who was supposed to provide medical assistance to anyone who needed it. "Ma'am, I have my Medicare card right here," Walter said quietly, maintaining his composure despite the mounting humiliation. "My doctor specifically referred me to this hospital for antibiotic treatment. I'm not looking for anything free." Lisa examined his Medicare card with exaggerated suspicion, holding it up to the light as if she expected to find evidence of fraud. "This Medicare stuff is always complicated. These old black patients usually have problems with their coverage. You probably don't understand how medical insurance works." The words cut deep. Walter had managed military logistics for decades, supervised complex operations, and earned the respect of soldiers and officers alike. But in this moment, he was being treated like he was incompetent, simply because of his age and race. "I assure you, ma'am, I understand exactly how my insurance works," Walter replied, his voice steady despite the anger building inside him. "I've been using Medicare successfully for several years now." What Lisa didn't know was that Walter Briggs wasn't just any Medicare patient. He was a highly decorated Vietnam veteran who had risked his life countless times for his country. More importantly, she didn't know that his former commanding officer, General Robert Avery, was driving to the hospital at that very moment for a scheduled appointment with the same medical staff. "Look, sir," Lisa continued, her voice taking on a condescending tone that carried across the lobby, "I'm going to be honest with you. We don't usually take Medicare patients here, especially not elderly black patients who might have complications. This is a private medical center. You'd be better served at the county hospital where they're used to dealing with your demographic." The word demographic hung in the air like a slur. Walter had faced enemy fire without flinching, but this casual dismissal of his worth as a human being cut deeper than any battlefield wound. "Ma'am, my doctor specifically referred me here," Walter said, producing a referral letter from his physician. "This isn't about demographics. This is about getting medical treatment that my doctor believes I need." Lisa barely glanced at the referral letter before sliding it back across the counter. "These referrals don't really mean much. Doctors refer patients here all the time without understanding our patient guidelines. We have standards about who we treat." By now, other patients in the waiting area were beginning to take notice of the confrontation. Some were pulling out their phones, sensing that something significant was happening. The atmosphere in the lobby had shifted from the usual medical center calm to something more tense and charged. "What kind of standards?" Walter asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Well," Lisa said, lowering her voice slightly but not enough to prevent nearby patients from overhearing, "we prefer patients who can afford our services without complication. Elderly Medicare patients, especially minority patients, often have issues with payment, understanding treatment protocols, and compliance with medical instructions." The accusation was clear, even if it wasn't stated directly. Walter was being discriminated against based on his age, race, and insurance type. Everything he had fought for in Vietnam, equality, freedom, dignity, was being trampled by a hospital receptionist who had never served her country a single day. But what Lisa Chen didn't know was that Walter Briggs had friends in high places, and one of those friends was about to walk through the front door of St. Mary's Medical Center. Meanwhile, in the parking lot, General Robert Avery was locking his car and walking toward the hospital entrance. At 68, the retired Army general still carried himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. He was at St. Mary's for his own routine appointment, but he had no idea that his old friend and fellow veteran was inside being humiliated by the reception staff. Back inside, Lisa was escalating her discrimination against Walter. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We simply don't have the resources to deal with complicated Medicare cases today. You should try the county hospital. They're more equipped to handle patients like you." "Patients like me?" Walter asked, his voice gaining an edge that his soldiers would have recognized, the quiet authority of a man who had commanded respect in life-and-death situations. "You know what I mean," Lisa replied dismissively. "Elderly minority patients with government insurance. It's just easier for everyone if you go somewhere more appropriate." That's when the automatic doors of the medical center opened, and General Robert Avery walked into the lobby. He was scanning the area looking for the registration desk, when he heard a familiar voice saying, "Ma'am, I'm simply asking for the medical treatment my doctor prescribed." The general's head snapped toward the reception desk, and his eyes widened as he recognized his old friend Walter Briggs. But more importantly, he could hear the tone of the conversation, and his military-trained instincts immediately told him that something was very wrong. General Avery had served with Walter in Vietnam, where he'd watched the man risk his life repeatedly to save his fellow soldiers. He knew about Walter's decorations, his heroism, and his unwavering commitment to serving others. And now he was watching Walter being dismissed and disrespected by a hospital employee. But before the general could intervene, the situation was about to get much worse. "Sir, I'm calling security," Lisa announced loudly, reaching for her phone. "We have an elderly black patient who is being disruptive and refusing to leave the premises. He's insisting on treatment that we've explained we can't provide." The lie was breathtaking in its audacity. Walter hadn't been disruptive in any way. He had simply asked for medical treatment and tried to maintain his dignity in the face of obvious discrimination. General Avery heard every word, and his expression shifted from confusion to anger to a cold fury that his subordinates would have recognized immediately. This was a man who had commanded troops in combat, who understood justice and injustice, and who was watching a decorated veteran being humiliated for no reason other than his age and race. "Excuse me," General Avery said, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed immediately. "I couldn't help but overhear this conversation." Lisa looked up, annoyed at another interruption to what she considered her efficient handling of an unwanted patient. "Sir, please take a seat. We'll be with you shortly. I'm currently dealing with a problem patient." "A problem patient," General Avery repeated, his voice dropping to a level that made several nearby patients stop what they were doing and pay attention. "This gentleman appears to be politely requesting medical treatment. How exactly does that make him a problem?" "Well," Lisa said, suddenly less confident as she sensed something different about this new arrival, "he's a Medicare patient, and we don't usually handle complicated cases like his." "Complicated cases like his," the general pressed, stepping closer to the reception desk. "What makes his case complicated?" Lisa glanced around nervously, realizing that her earlier confidence was evaporating quickly. "He's elderly, and minority patients sometimes have issues with understanding treatment protocols." The silence that followed was deafening. General Avery looked from Lisa to Walter, and Walter could see recognition dawning in his old commander's eye. But we need to pause here, because what happened next would not only change how Walter was treated at St. Mary's Medical Center, it would lead to a complete transformation of the hospital's policies and procedures. Because General Avery wasn't just any concerned citizen who had witnessed discrimination, he was a man with connections, influence, and a deep understanding of what justice looked like. "Walter," General Avery said, his voice softening as he addressed his old friend. "Walter Briggs?" Walter's face lit up with recognition and relief. "General Avery? Sir? What brings you here today, old friend?" "I came for antibiotics, sir. My doctor referred me here for treatment, but—" Walter gestured toward Lisa, who was beginning to realize that she had made a terrible mistake. General Avery turned back to Lisa, and his expression was colder than anything she had ever encountered. "Ms. Chen," he said, reading her name tag, "I want to make sure I understand this situation correctly. You've been refusing medical treatment to this gentleman." "Well, not refusing exactly," Lisa stammered, "but we have policies about Medicare patients and—" "Policies?" General Avery interrupted. "What policies, specifically, allow you to discriminate against patients based on their age, race, and insurance type?" Lisa's face went pale as she realized the legal implications of what the general was suggesting. "I wasn't discriminating. I was just explaining our procedures." "Your procedures?" General Avery repeated slowly, "which apparently include telling patients that they don't belong here because they're elderly black men with Medicare insurance." The general's voice was carrying across the lobby now, and everyone in the waiting area was watching the confrontation unfold. Several patients were recording with their phones, realizing they were witnessing something significant. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding," Lisa said, desperately trying to backtrack. "I was just trying to direct Mr. Briggs to the most appropriate care." "The most appropriate care," General Avery said, "would be the care his doctor prescribed, which brought him to this hospital. Unless you're suggesting that his doctor was wrong to refer him here." Lisa found herself trapped in a logical corner. Either she had to admit that she was discriminating against Walter, or she had to insult the judgment of a physician who had referred him to St. Mary's. "I was just following standard procedures," she said weakly. "Standard procedures?" General Avery's voice rose slightly, taking on the tone he had used when addressing subordinates who had failed in their duties. "Show me where in your standard procedures it says to refuse treatment to decorated veterans because of their race." "Decorated veterans?" Lisa repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. General Avery reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "Let me read you something, Miss Ch. This is from the official military database." He began scrolling through information about Walter's service record. Sergeant Major Walter Briggs, United States Army. 3 tours in Vietnam. Purple Heart for wounds received in action. Bronze Star for valor in combat. Silver Star for exceptional heroism during the rescue of 43 American soldiers under enemy fire. The lobby had gone completely silent. Even the background noise of the medical center seemed to fade away as people processed what they were hearing. "This man," General Avery continued, his voice gaining strength and moral authority, risked his life repeatedly to save other American soldiers. He spent 40 years serving his country with distinction. And you've been treating him like he's some kind of charity case who doesn't deserve basic medical care." Lisa's hands were shaking now. I didn't know." He didn't tell me he was a veteran. He shouldn't have to tell you, General Avery replied sharply. Every patient who walks through these doors deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their military service. But the fact that you've been discriminating against a decorated war hero makes this situation even more inexcusable. Walter had been standing quietly through this exchange, watching his old commander defend his honor in a way that reminded him of their days in Vietnam when General Avery had always stood up for his soldiers. "General," Walter said softly, "it's okay. I can find treatment elsewhere." "No, Walter, it's not okay," General Avery replied firmly. "You came here for medical treatment that your doctor prescribed. You're going to receive that treatment, and you're going to receive it with the respect and dignity that every patient deserves." He turned back to Lisa, who was now visibly trembling. "Ms. Chen, I want to speak with your supervisor immediately, and I want to speak with the hospital administrator, and I want to speak with whoever is responsible for training staff in patient relations and anti-discrimination policy." "Sir, I can try to find someone, but you're not trying anything," General Avery interrupted. "You're going to get your supervisor right now, or I'm going to call the hospital's board of directors directly and explain to them exactly what kind of discrimination is happening in their lobby." Lisa reached for her phone with shaking hands and dialed an extension. "Dr. Martinez, could you please come to the front desk? We have a situation that requires your immediate attention." Within minutes, Dr. Elena Martinez, the hospital's chief physician, appeared in the lobby. She was a professional woman in her 50s who had been running St. Mary's Medical Center for nearly a decade, and she immediately sensed that something serious was happening. "What seems to be the problem?" Dr. Martinez asked, looking between General Avery, Walter, and the obviously distressed Lisa. "The problem," General Avery said, "is that your receptionist has been refusing medical treatment to this decorated veteran based on his age, race, and insurance type. She told him that these types of people don't belong here, and that elderly black patients usually cause problems." Dr. Martinez's expression shifted immediately from professional concern to alarm. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "Your staff member," General Avery continued, "has been engaging in clear discrimination against a patient who was referred here by his physician for antibiotic treatment. She told him to go to the county hospital because this facility doesn't usually treat elderly minority patients with Medicare." Dr. Martinez turned to Lisa, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Is this true?" Lisa opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. The evidence was overwhelming, and dozens of patients had witnessed the entire exchange. "Dr. Martinez," General Avery said, "I'd like you to meet Sergeant Major Walter Briggs, United States Army, retired. 3 tours in Vietnam, Purple Heart, Bronze Star, Silver Star, and a 40-year record of distinguished service to his country." Dr. Martinez's face went pale as she realized the magnitude of what had happened. Not only had her staff engaged in illegal discrimination, but they had done it to a decorated war hero in front of dozens of witnesses, many of whom had been recording the interaction. "Mr. Briggs," Martinez said, turning to Walter with genuine respect and concern, "I sincerely apologize for the treatment you've received here today. This is absolutely unacceptable, and I assure you that we will take immediate action to correct this situation." "What kind of action?" General Avery asked, his voice still carrying the authority of someone who demanded accountability. "First," Dr. Martinez said, "Mr. Briggs will receive the medical treatment he came here for, immediately and at no charge. Second, we will be conducting a full investigation into this incident and implementing additional training for all staff members on patient rights and anti-discrimination policies. And third," General Avery pressed. Martinez looked at Lisa, who was still standing behind the reception desk, looking like she wanted to disappear. "Third, there will be appropriate disciplinary action taken against any staff member found to have violated our patient care standards." But General Avery wasn't finished. "Martinez, I think you should know that this incident has been recorded by several patients, and I suspect it will be shared widely on social media. This isn't just about one patient being mistreated. This is about systemic issues in how your hospital treats certain types of patients." Martinez nodded grimly. "I understand, General. We take these matters very seriously, and we will conduct a thorough review of our policies and procedures to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. I hope you will, General Avery said, because Walter Briggs isn't just my friend. He's a hero who saved 43 American lives in Vietnam, and he deserves better than what he received here today. The crowd that had gathered in the lobby began to applaud. Several patients approached Walter to shake his hand and thank him for his service. The atmosphere had shifted completely from discrimination and humiliation to recognition and respect. Lisa Chen was quietly escorted away from the reception desk by hospital security, her employment at St. Mary's Medical Center effectively over. The video recordings of the incident would indeed go viral, leading to nationwide conversations about discrimination in healthcare and the treatment of veterans. Walter received his antibiotic treatment that day, along with a formal apology from the hospital's board of directors. St. Mary's Medical Center implemented comprehensive new training programs for all staff members and established clear protocols for treating every patient with dignity and respect. General Avery and Walter rekindled their friendship that day, meeting regularly for coffee and sharing stories about their service together. But more importantly, Walter never again faced discrimination when seeking medical care. The incident had made him locally famous, and his story became a symbol of the courage and sacrifice of all veterans. The hospital staff learned a valuable lesson that day about the importance of treating every patient with respect, regardless of their appearance, age, race, or insurance type. They discovered that heroes don't always look like what people expect them to look like, and that true honor comes from serving others, not from judging them. Walter Briggs had saved 43 lives on the battlefields of Vietnam, but on that day at St. Mary's Medical Center, General Robert Avery had saved something equally important: Walter's dignity, his faith in the system he had served, and his belief that justice could still prevail when good people stood up for what was right. The incident lasted less than an hour, but its impact would be felt for years to come. It was a reminder that discrimination has no place in healthcare, that veterans deserve respect and honor regardless of their age or race, and that sometimes it takes someone with authority and courage to stand up for those who have already given so much for their country. In the end, St. Mary's Medical Center became a better institution because of what happened that day. They learned that every patient has a story, every person deserves dignity, and every veteran has earned the right to be treated as a hero, no matter what they look like or how old they are. If this story moved you, remember to honor the veterans in your community, regardless of their age, race, or circumstances. Subscribe for more stories of courage and justice, and share this reminder that real heroes come in all forms and deserve recognition for their sacrifice.